Jill Watts is a painter, activist, and humanist. She became concerned about the exhibit at the Worcester Art Museum, which showed suits of armor from the Middle Ages. She viewed the suits of armor as not protection, but a way of isolating its inhabitants from the world. The armor was a metal prison. Their inhabitants were in solitary confinement. We will never be safe conquering and controlling everything. Even though the world may sometimes be unsafe, we must confront it with love and kindness. In response to the suit of armor, she made her own suit, which was made up of cloth panels with stories written on them about people that she knew in her life. Jill suggested that everyone should write down something about someone who contributed something to their life or the lives of others. I decided to write something about Jill. I met Jill 50 years ago in art school. We marched for civil rights and then for the war in Vietnam. Our mutual friend Menashe Bilsey ran a small bookstore. The owner of the bookstore was an old-time socialist from the 1930s. He allowed political activists to congregate in the store. Some of us who gathered in the bookstore would become well-known nationally, like our friend Abby Hoffman. Aside from running the bookstore, Menashe also published an underground newspaper and was the head of the local Abby Hoffman Defense Fund, which raised money for Abby during the Chicago 7 trial. At this time, Jill was organizing welfare mothers in Worcester. She traveled to Russia, Turkey, Morocco. She went to Nepal and visited the monasteries and then went to India. For many years, Jill worked as a geriatric psychiatric therapist who offered services for the mentally ill. After making 3 trips to Guyana, she decided to retire early at 65 and join the Peace Corps, which would allow her to be more valued to the people of Guyana. The Peace Corps told her that her skills were not needed in Africa, but were in St. Lucia. For 2 years, she taught visual arts program at St. Lucia in the Caribbean. She also worked with a publisher and helped to put together a book of stories and paintings by the children of St. Lucia to raise money for education. Jill has been a good painter, a good sculptor all of her life. She's also done so much for other people, and it's really been a joy and a pleasure being her friend for 50 years.
I had begun my suit of protection in response to the shock of seeing suits of armor twice as large as life-size plastered over the buses that were driving by in my neighborhood. They were very threatening. All I could think of was power, fighting, anger, and anything but protection. The armor itself seemed to be a prison. The person inside, all I could think of was that they were in solitary confinement. My heart went out to the people in the neighborhood, many of whom have been targeted by the police and targeted by those in power. And it was as if these buses were coming and emphasizing that through this neighborhood. I had realized early on that the armory, which was a wonderful place, full of armor, and a great museum, had to close, and the suits of armor within it were going to the Worcester Art Museum. And somehow that did seem appropriate on some level, and lucky. However, the extension out into the community was jarring. The more I thought about it, the less it seemed like protection. And the more I could relate it to what was happening in the world. I would read about our decisions and our intentions of going to war, of controlling other countries, controlling the world. And it all seemed as if we were returning to that mindset that in order to be safe, we had to rule over everyone. And so I started thinking, what did I see as protection? And I realized what my protection was against all of this information and against this mindset was my wonderful life experiences with friends, with other people, and those people who had gone out of their way to do brave and courageous things, who had gone out of their way to create beauty, who had gone out of their way to just be themselves and be open to others. And so I thought I would make a suit of protection with their stories, because all of their stories were so special to me. And the more I thought about it, the more people came to mind. Certainly all the people on the suit don't exhaust the number of people who would help me. There are many, many more. I had to stop writing somewhere. From my children, from even non-people, the animals that I had, being able to walk in the woods. All of these things softened me and helped me accept that the whole world was not something that I needed to be fearful of, that I could enjoy the world, that I could enjoy others, that I could open my heart to them and they would respond in kind. And by and large, that happened throughout my life. Was it always wonderful? No. Could everybody do the same thing? Of course not. But each person gave me something very unique and very special. And I was smiling as I created the panels, as I thought the stories through, as I wrote them up, as I sewed them on. The suit is soft on purpose because I see the softening as necessary, as one of those things that we have to do in order to be open to each other in a way that we're taught not to. We're taught to be fearful. We're taught to distrust anything that isn't like us or anybody who isn't saying or doing things the way we do them. So it was a great awakening for me. The more I did, the more I enjoyed doing it. And the more I enjoyed doing it, the fancier and heavier the suit got. After about 102 panels, I had to say enough. I can't fit anything else on this without burying myself. I also realized that I carry these stories with me everywhere I go. That these stories are in my mind, that seeing a certain scene or seeing something will bring up one of them. And I smile again. I think, too, that we're so used to not honoring each other, that it's important to tell each other's story. Not the fancy story about somebody who was an explorer or, a famous person, but the everyday story. Because most of us, let's face it, we're everyday people. We're not that special, yet we are special in our own way, in our own unique way. And we learn from each other. And often it's not the person who is the one at the top of the ladder that is the teacher, but the one at the bottom, the one who can teach us precisely what they know. And maybe not everything, but at least that. And so it was a joy to make it, and a joy to be part of it, and to feel as if I could tell people's stories, because that's the way information really gets passed on to others. They're all handwritten, because the writing itself was part of it, and part of the thinking about it. It gave me time, in a way a computer doesn't give me time, to digest and think and consider. I would love to see everyone take at least one or two people that have made a very big difference in their life and write that story for themselves and just save it and keep it and know they can read it at any time, especially when they're feeling put upon or as if things don't matter, and hopefully then they'll smile. Probably read more too at some other time if you need it. I don't know. You were so sensitive to our situation and supportive. Although we were strangers from another country, you figured out that we had no money when we did not come to your tea house and simply arrived with food for us, saying, Allah sends me. You made herbal medicines for me when I was ill and did your best to teach me Arabic, being as effective as any language teacher on TV's educational channel. You supported others and provided healing. I can still visualize your tea house and hear the music of the Rif Mountains that your friends came to play. You saved us from arrest when the king arrived and foreigners were being rounded up to be jailed, telling the government forces that we had children. You were truly a good man. Joe of the grand gesture made no mention of his heroic past, but was willing to discuss his homelessness and preference for it over the wet shelter, proclaimed he did not need things when an aide tried to give him a poster, but accepted a plant and cared for it. When ignored by the doctors, he cut the cast off his leg with a butter knife because he knew it was set wrong. After discharge, he sent 24 long-stemmed red roses to the nurses from his spot overlooking the Blackstone. long after I was told that the Canadian government found him one of 3 heroes they sought to honor for valor in World War II, and provided him with relative luxury in a retirement home until the end of his life. Mary, my second mother, my lifeline, you told me what was acceptable in the world and what was not. You allowed all your girls much freedom, but would also set firm limits. You could not teach me to dance because it came so naturally to you. I remember you asking me, "How can you fall?" in a wondering tone. You allowed me to help you both teach and make costumes, which I gladly did since it gave me a sense of self-efficacy. You introduced us to club life, the life of music and dancers. You were unflappable, possibly because of the tranquilizers, but nevertheless you would walk out in your stately manner, to lead the frozen stage-struck child to safety, or confront the patron in your bar calmly stating, "That's enough now," or approach customers trying to seduce us, stating that they are my children. You are always conscious of the loss of your own child. That may be why you gave us so much. Jack, you have grown on me over the 50-plus years I have known you. I appreciate your persistence in your art and your interest in recording what is ignored by mainstream media. You have consistently pointed out the elephant in the living room, covering the gay pride movement, the Occupy Wall Street demonstrations, and our government's atrocities in ways that people could not ignore. You have remained true to yourself and your ideas, sometimes a voice in the wilderness, and at others the voice of the masses. Ruby, a true friend, boss in collusion, who allowed me the freedom to organize welfare mothers despite restrictions on political action that came with my job. Hiring me in the first place was a gift in itself. You are willing to work with me, an ignorant white girl, to educate me regarding the issues of the day, travel with me to the convention in New Jersey to support the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, try to teach me to clean trout, and offer your sage knowledge, saying that everything changed with your daughter, an unmanageable teen, when you changed your thinking from what am I going to do about it to what are you going to do about it. Adolf, you were my favorite uncle. No wonder you brought me magical gifts like fluorite rocks in different colors, baskets you had carved from peach and prune pits, and always a mechanical toy for Christmas. You blew smoke rings for me when I was in my high chair. I didn't mind the consternation of my parents because you were usually drunk, and fully enjoyed your presence. I am thankful I got the chance to tell you how special you were to me. Menashe, so often attempting the grand gesture only to have things go wrong, or right as the case may be. You were able to stay in the military long enough to get schooling on the GI Bill without that even being your intention. Your gallant offer to marry me in spite of your sexual orientation was sweet. You outdid yourself trying to rescue your sister's child, only to have her unappreciative and angry in the end. This was not unpredictable, and I admire your greatness of heart to try, despite ominous signs that it would not work out. I still make soup the way you taught me. Friends for 50 years, there are few people I can say that about. David, at 16, you were my son's first babysitter, a courageous undertaking for someone who had no idea how to change a diaper or what to do with a screaming baby. I loved your quiet willingness to take chances and your bravery in legally confronting the officers that tried to goad you and your two friends into running so they could shoot you after beating you. And you won. I owe you apologies for not realizing that your request many years later for a reunion was time sensitive, or that you were dying of AIDS. To all the dogs that passed through my life, Brownie, who would keep me from leaving the yard as a child, who would try to go to school with me, and who played with a skunk for a long time without being sprayed, who was always gentle with me, although I was not with him, the dog with the broken jaw, saved by Willie from other dogs, who ended up at the junkyard after he was adopted, but then was hit by a car much too soon, Barney, who was not retrieved in time from the pound, the shepherd puppy who died in my room of distemper, despite everything we did, the beautiful beagle puppy that was hit by a car so soon after I took her in, the puppy in St. Lucia, who was filled with joy just seeing me, who died only after I said goodbye. I wish I had been able to honor all of you more while you lived. Richard, man of sweetness and ability to change, you are the only man who has said to me in private, I would be nothing without my wife. She made me what I am today. I remember your care and concern for the baby mouse in the garage that you kept in a matchbox and fed crackers so that no one would step on it. Your wonderful response to your child coming out as gay was to start a parent support group and to give that child understanding, support, and affirmation. You are open to all others regardless of their appearance or background, and willing to engage in a positive way with anyone who responds in kind. Alice, whose face became the sun as she was handed a 4-week-old puppy to hold, who was often covered in pigeons that had to be removed by throwing bread outside as she entered so they would not accompany her. She saw the rest home as her home, escaping from the nursing home to return. Pat, the manager, agreed she could. In her faux leopard coat and red high heels, she visited the local bars, helping herself to others' drinks. Venice, when I first met you, I was amazed that you would offer to show my artwork without even seeing it. No hemming and hawing or worrying about its quality. Simply a genuine reaching out and trusting another fellow artist. A strange thing in the U.S. I only hope I have been able to support you over the years as you have supported me. You reach out to the entire neighborhood, giving food to those who could not pay full price, residing here and offering many opportunities to writers and musicians as well as visual artists. At your restaurant, both body and soul are fed. Gitch, you are outrageous at times, imagining that King Street was like Paris, that you are a part of the Parisian intelligentsia and group of elite writers. However, you managed to bring me with you into an appreciation of Gide, Sartre, and others. The edifice of our friendship was fragile in that when I could not fully embrace your writing, you distanced yourself from me. You were the best friend you knew how to be, and willing to support me even against my own will when I was ready to give up on Russian and college, sitting me down with a glass of wine, drilling me over and over. What a shame you did not teach officially. You would have been stellar. You were born at the wrong time, before gay rights and full acceptance. I was happy to have you reconnect later, but some of the magic of being able to fully share what I thought with you was gone. I was glad to hear of the meditation group you led at the Mustard Seed, mentioned in your obituary.
Marianne, you were courageous in your choices and led an unusual life. Your pendulum swung from extreme control to the breaking of most social barriers. Raised by nuns to being a sex worker, and through an upper-class existence as an engineer, what ran through it all was your compassion and willingness to do the right thing for your friends and family. You did not escape unscathed from the chances you took, but at least you were able to end your life with someone who loved and cared for you. You deserve no less. I will always remember your kindness watching Richard, despite great discomfort with babies, while I visited my dying father, driving around and around the hospital parking lot so he would not cry. Thank you for the regular, if limited, contact we had until the end of your life.
Strange young man, talking salad talk, gesturing, dressed bizarrely, staring. But then he executes a set of perfect ballet movements, immediately returning to the salad talk, gesturing. When I asked about him the next year, they could only say he had gone away. I was told later that he used to dance with the African ballet.
Dad, you did not talk your caring. You acted it out in so many large and small ways that if written, they would not fit on the entire suit. You were there for 6 years, driving me and as many others who could be crammed into your car every day after grade school, occasionally driving all of us for an ice cream without saying anything before taking us home. You were the driver when we, as campfire girls, went on trips, which was often. You are perhaps the kindest and most generous man I have ever known. You took in Mama's family and adopted her nephews, never complaining about the expense, walking to work when you had to. You stopped for all strangers in distress, got the neighbor's boy inside off the snow when he was drunk, drove my friends and me to New York City as you groused that we were goddamn crazy kids, but seemed to love the adventure yourself. You expected me to be too grown up at times, telling me to do as I wished, but to be careful not to upset my mother. It was the way you yourself conducted your life. You held her in such high esteem that you both remained separate in many ways. While not understanding my choices and decisions, you loved unconditionally, even borrowing money so that I could travel to Russia. I wish I knew more about your past, but you were reticent, and I did not know enough to persist. I would like to think that I could be as good-hearted as you were.
Amy, who was visited by Indians while in her alcohol-induced coma, who told her things and who managed to walk again, said she was given alcohol from at least 4 years of age. She credits unknown people with getting her to the steps of the hospital, saving her life, and her best friend's regular visits with giving her courage. She herself always did right by her friends, keeping a vigil as one was dying, threatening bodily harm to a new resident who complained about another friend's eating habits, and able to joke with staff when they tried to pull rank on her. She fell in love in the rest home as she worked to save the wreckage of her life one day at a time. I designed the headpiece in the manner that you see based on some of the armor on display at the Art Museum, because I really wanted to have people make the connection between the idea of protection and armor and true protection being friendship and caring for others and openness to others. Because I see that as very important and something that is not being emphasized right now. That we are constantly told that we should be fearful of others, both in the larger picture and also in our own lives. Children are taken to play dates by their parents. Children are not going out to play like they used to in the streets because of fear. Maybe it is more dangerous, but to sit holed up in a house, to be fearful to be on the street, to worry about others, only makes the situation worse. And by opening our hearts, by accepting those who may be a little different, by being out there and having the courage to engage with people who are different from us, hopefully we can change that. We can feel more open, and we can get the benefits of doing that. The armor in the traditional sense, just like weapons in the traditional sense, only close ourselves off from others. Doesn't help us, doesn't help the world. It has never worked. Only embracing the other causes true safety to come about, not having the biggest gun. Always there will be somebody who can challenge that. And by relying on guns and by relying on locks and by relying on all of the security that we seem to feel is necessary, we shut ourselves off from the world and each other and put ourselves in prison. And I'd like us all to break out and dance. Hopefully we can.